Rerolling is a very, very important process that a player of any gacha game will do in order to have the most ideal start to their journey in that said gacha game, which is why today I'm going to be going over who and what you should and shouldn't reroll for in solo leveling Arise. But when rerolling, there are actually two different methods that you can do when rerolling, as basically the first method of rerolling that I feel like most people will commonly do is basically reroll on the selection draw banner and get one, maybe two SSR items on this banner and then call it a day and then just carry on with your account. Or what some people might do is that as well, just get some items from the selection draw and then maybe go into the rate up banner and hopefully get the rated up character. So obviously when Global comes out, you'll have Silvermane, Baekhyunho and also Charhain to be released as well, so it'll be completely up to you in what rate up character you want, as well as which method you want to choose from. But just know, obviously, if you're going to try and go for the rate up character as well as some items from the selection draw banner, you're going to have it's going to be much longer in order for you to get your rerolled account done. But overall, when you're rerolling on the selection draw banner, you'll basically have an option to choose 4 different items, which you can see right here, and then basically you'll be able to have the ability to increase the chance of you getting those items every time you do pull on this selection draw banner. And then overall, the most ideal reroll I would say you could get to basically start your account and make you have an amazing start is to get one SSR hunter right here, so pretty much just any SSR hunter, but obviously mainly the best ones you'd want, as well as a really, really good weapon for Jinwoo as well. So let's go through all of the SSR hunters as well as all of the SSR Jinwoo weapons, and let's go over which ones you probably should or shouldn't reroll for. Alright, so starting off with Silvermane Baekhyunho. Silvermane Baekhyunho is a character that is based around doing a lot of basic attack damage with his obviously basic attacks and also core attacks thanks to his basic skill, Extreme Attack Beast Form. And although you can't actually get him from the selection draw banner, you will still be able to get him from the rate up banner, but overall I don't really think he's a character that's worth rerolling for as of yet. I do think he's definitely probably one of, if not the best DPS in the game. However, I think when it comes to other hunters, especially in comparison, I feel like he's not really that needed, to be honest. And then there's also the regular Baekhyunho, which again I don't think is a character you're gonna want to necessarily reroll for, as yes, this Baekhyunho is also a very good character, a great break damage dealer, has break damage on literally everything pretty much apart from his support skill. Oh no, sorry, apart from his ultimate, that's literally it. But to be honest, you do get a very free light tank free to play option in Eugene-ho, who is obviously nowhere near as good as this Baekhyunho is, but he's definitely a viable option in many people's teams, which for me just doesn't really make him needed. Then we have Lim Tae-kyu. Lim Tae-kyu is another dark DPS, also has a lot of break damage. Again, another character I wouldn't really necessarily recommend rerolling for as such, because he is another very good DPS and just damage dealer, but there are just there's a lot of hunters in here that just bring so much value to your account as a whole and can just be brought in like a load of different scenarios, whereas I feel like Lim Tae-kyu is not so much. Choi Jong-in is a character that I don't think will be available on launch, so unfortunately you cannot reroll for him. And then we have Woo Jinchul. Woo Jinchul is probably the character you want to stay the furthest away from, as you don't really need him at all, because you actually get him for free from a 28-day login, or is it 14-day? No, it's a 14-day login, and you get him and also his weapon completely for free, so there's really no need for you to ever want to get this guy when you're rerolling, unless if you just like him so much that you want his first dupe on him, which fair enough, you do whatever you want to do. But yeah, Jinchul definitely never ever even consider about rerolling for this guy. Min Byung-gu is probably he is the best support in the game, as I mentioned in my previous tier list video, as he is just a fantastic character, and obviously with the release of Charhain, he is going to be really, really good with her, because he gives a bunch of crit rate as also crit damage and just flat damage increases, which is going to make him not only just a fantastic support for Jinwoo, but also Charhain as well, and he's a character that you can just bring on practically any piece of content in the game. Hwang Dong-soo is up next, and again, I just don't really think you necessarily need him, to be honest, because I don't really feel like the wind element is that really necessary at the moment, and isn't really needed for any pieces of content. And yes, Dong-soo can do some really good damage, thanks to his ability to spam skills and stuff like that, and stack a bunch of defense, but yeah, I don't know. Again, as I said before, unless if you really like him, then I would not really personally recommend that you reroll for him. Lee Bora is up next, and Lee Bora is sort of a supportive, sort of DPS kind of character, as she is supporting basically just your damage as a whole, thanks to her charm debuffs that she applies on her QT, as well as the support skill, as well as through other things thanks to her passive. And then she also is very useful when supporting a mono dark team, so again, sort of just like Min Byung-gu being very good with Charhain, as also on Min Byung-gu's first dupe, you can actually increase your crit rate and crit damage for your whole team, and also by even more for light members as well. And sort of Lee Bora is just sort of like a much more offensive version of that, as she does support the mono dark elements, as as she does increase dark elemental damage by 10% for team members standing inside the enhancement circle and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, again, Libora is a good character, but again, I just don't think you need her at all. So yeah, I don't think I would recommend rerolling for her. Emma Lawrence, if you saw my tier list video, then you know that I think this is probably the best hunter in the game, which makes her a 100% guaranteed yes, you should definitely try and reroll for her, as she is literally good for literally everything. She has a ton of break damage, a ton of AoE damage, a very spammable ultimate, she has self-healing and stuff like that. She is just an amazing character. She does a ton of damage, and she's a HP scaler as well, so normally HP scalers in games like these are relatively easier to build. But yeah, honestly, amazing. This character is so good. And then finally we have Seo Jiwoo. I think next to Emma Lawrence, I think she's probably the second character you want to reroll for the most. So if you get either Seo Jiwoo or Emma Lawrence from your reroll, then I say you just take the account pretty much, because these two hunters are a joke. And the reason why Seo Jiwoo is so good mainly is because she's just a water character, and I'll get onto why that's just so important in a little bit. But yeah, basically thanks to her passive, which gives her the water dragon training, it basically just allows you to spam your skills, lightning kick and also water dragon rush. Then you can just spam your skills and do a ton of damage as well. This character does a huge amount of damage, and because she's able to spam her skills, it means she also has a lot of break damage as well. Although her skills only offer light break damage, because you're pressing them so much and so often, it then means you just get a ton of break damage anyways. And pretty much, yeah, eventually you can just like somewhat infinitely spam these skills, because when you press these skills, you also generate your core attack, which when you use your core attack, it then basically allows you to get your basic skills back up as well, which is just amazing. And then she has an extremely high power and high damage output with her ultimate as well. And she also generates a shield for you when you use her with Jinwoo and stuff like that, which is always amazing. But the real reason why she's probably one of the best characters that you want to reroll for in this game is because of this boss right here, the Gatekeeper of Hell, Cerberus. As this boss, I mean, if you've played it against it or challenged it, I haven't really tried to battle the highest because I just can't be bothered, to be honest, and that's because of how annoying this boss can be. And yeah, the reason why she's so good for this is because this boss is actually weak to water damage, and because when it comes to actual water hunters, she is literally the only water SSR hunter in the game, and then the next best thing becomes Nam Chae Young, and then the next three options just aren't really that amazing for bosses like the Cerberus. And then onto Sung Jin Woo weapons. Obviously, there's not as many SSR Sung Jin Woo weapons, but there's also a lot of very good SR Sung Jin Woo weapons, which you'll get a lot of them just by summoning naturally, so there's not really you don't really have to worry too much about getting these or not. But yeah, let's just kick things off with the Shadow Scythe. And the Shadow Scythe is a weapon, it's a really good weapon, definitely one of the best weapons in the game, and I can't lie, when I first saw this weapon, I just wasn't really too impressed, as it just consumed your HP, so I thought that drawback would have been just a bit too big to even for me personally to make it feel worth it. But when I got the weapon, it was Jesus Christ, this weapon does a ton of damage. So yeah, the Essence Harvest consuming 5% of your HP doesn't even mean anything, because the damage this weapon does with its skill being Essence Harvest, just it does so much damage. However, all those things are great and all, but I would still recommend that you do not reroll for this weapon. And that might sound extremely stupid. However, what this game does extremely well is through your regular challenges that you'll do, which are just like first time rewards, you can actually get not only one copy of the Shadow Scythe for free, but also actually 2 copies of it, which means you can get it plus an extra dupe of it, which means you get this passive here where you can increase your crit rate by 25%, which is a joke. This weapon is amazing, so yeah, you don't really need to reroll for it because you already get 2 copies of it for free. Demon King's Longsword is probably by far the most underwhelming, or maybe first or second most underwhelming weapon that Jinwoo can have, as this is sort of just a very defensive sort of weapon. It's all about using your counterattacks with your shield, and then also not your shield, sorry, your counterattack and your skill and stuff like that, and then generating a shield as well to then be able to tank the damage, so you can just get a pretty free counterattack without being punished too much. And then it's got some stuns as well, and then it gives you some attack increases and stuff like that. But again, as I've mentioned before, the wind element just isn't really that needed. I don't really remember, like, I know the final boss of the story is weak to wind damage, but it's really not that deep, to be honest. And the damage this thing, it just doesn't really give you many damage increases within the weapon alone, or just to Jinwoo himself. So yeah, for me, this weapon is definitely a skip. I know this weapon is a very cool iconic weapon in the series, but for me overall, I don't think you necessarily need this weapon. It's a good weapon, obviously, because it's an SSR weapon. All of these weapons are good, but out of all of the other ones, yeah, I would not recommend rerolling for this weapon. Alright, Thetis' Grimoire, and Thetis' Grimoire is probably one of maybe my favorite weapon that I've actually used, as pretty much much, this weapon is just a CC monster, as when you use your skill Water Spray, you'll be able to have a 100% chance to inflict the Cold Ice effect, which is not only a 4-second freeze, but yes, it's a freeze for 4 seconds, included in the duration of the actual Water Spray. And basically, when you freeze them, you'll apply the Cold Ice effect, which obviously interrupts them, so being the stun. And then when the effect ends, you'll deal additional damage equal to 10% of the damage that the enemy has taken during the duration of that freeze. So one combo that I've really liked enjoying and doing with this is basically with Jinwoo, when you use it, you can freeze an enemy whilst they've got like a ton of defense drops and stuff like that. And then what you can actually do is use your ultimate Truth Mutilate, which does a huge amount of damage. This is where most of Jinwoo's damage, like burst damage, will come from. So you can use Truth Mutilate to do a ton of damage to them, so then they take an extra huge amount of bonus damage from the Cold Ice effect. But yeah, I would definitely say it's one of the weapons up there that I maybe would recommend summoning for. There's definitely way better weapons you can get. I'm not saying this is definitely the best weapon that you can go for, but if you do get Thetis' Grimoire when re-rolling, I wouldn't be mad at all. It's a really good weapon. Vulcan's Rage is up next, and I've used this weapon a ton, and I've always had some very mixed opinions about this weapon, of first thinking this weapon's awful, then it's actually good, and then it's awful again. And I still think it's kind of awful, as for me it's just a bit too slow. The damage is good from its skill, as well as the explosion's also good that it does. But yeah, I honestly, if you get this weapon, I wouldn't be too happy if I got it through rerolling, because when I have used it, it just hasn't really felt that great, to be honest. The Huntsman is up next, and I love the Huntsman. The Huntsman is one of my favorite weapons in the game as well. I actually use it quite a lot, as there's I use the light elements skills with Jinwoo quite a bit. And yeah, the Huntsman is really good because Judgment Time and being the skill, as well as the core attack of this weapon, are the only weapon that Jinwoo can wield that actually deals break damage, which makes this a pretty much one-of-a-kind weapon in that sense, as well as also just the ridiculous damage this skill can actually output. As pretty much whenever you use your skill Judgment Time, you'll change your core attack to be Time to Hunt for 6 seconds, and then you'll increase the damage of it by 60%. And then basically whenever you use a basic attack, core attack, or Time to Hunt, and it hits targets within 4 meters, and then increases the damage by 50% as well. But overall, to be honest, the only, I guess, issue with it, again, just like with Thetis' Grimoire, is you do get the Lustrous Dragon Sword for free, so which is another like decent light weapon. But obviously the Huntsman is way better than this weapon, at least I think anyways, so it's a good upgrade. But again, you will always have the option of the Lustrous Dragon Sword to use for light damage, so the Huntsman isn't going to be something that's going to add like a huge amount of value to your account. But I still think it's a really good weapon, and I think it's definitely one of the better weapons for Jinwoo anyways. Alright, the penultimate weapon is the Demonic Plum Flower Sword. This is probably the best weapon in the game, as it just gives you a ton of bonuses, even at 0 dupes. This weapon is a joke, it's ridiculous. As pretty much every time you use your skill with this weapon, you'll apply the Plum Flower effect, which just increases your crit damage by 12% and then stacks up to 3 times, so you can get a permanent 36% crit damage increase. And then with it being a 25-second cooldown, it'll take you like 75 seconds in order to fully get those buffs, which when you're doing fighting off against like a lot of high HP bosses, then it's really easy to do and get off, and it's no problem at all. But when you actually dash and also use the skill, you'll not only apply the Plum Flower, but also Full Bloom, which will increase the usage speed of your skill by 20%, and then it'll also increase the attack by 4%, as well as your crit rate by an extra 4% as well. But yeah, this weapon is so good, and it's probably the #1 weapon I would definitely recommend you re-rolling for. And then finally, the very final weapon we have is Moonshadow, which is the brand new weapon for Jinwoo that came out like a couple of weeks ago, a week ago, something like that. I don't really know. And this is probably the second, maybe third best weapon in the game for Jinwoo. I'm not too sure, as I haven't really used it for myself, but I have seen other people use it, and it's a joke. This weapon is so good. And this weapon also has some very similar properties, as it does work very well with the free-to-play Shadow Scythe, as pretty much when you use your skill Moonglow Shining in the Dark, you'll apply the full moon effect to the target, which is basically just a debuff that is applied to enemies, which doesn't do anything. And then when the last hit of that skill actually does hit, you'll then slow down time for 3 seconds, and then apply 1 instance of Lunar Eclipse to the target for every instance of full moon that you have. So essentially what you do is you use your skill to apply this debuff, and then when you've hit a certain amount of times, you'll keep stacking it. It can stack attack more times depending on how many dupes you do have for this weapon. And then basically when the last hit of the skill does hit, you can then apply Lunar Eclipse, which basically just gives the enemy, makes the enemy take 10% more damage, and it makes them take 10% more dark damage as well for 3 seconds. And obviously, just like with the Plumflower Sword being very good because it's crit based, because the Shadow Scythe is also a dark weapon as well, it also means it can benefit from the Lunar Eclipse debuff, whatever it was called, very, very, very nicely as well. So yeah, the Moon Shadow plus Shadow Scythe is another fantastic combo. So overall, I would say this weapon is also probably one of the weapons you're going to want to look for when re-rolling, because yeah, this weapon is an amazing weapon, or at least I think so anyways, as you do get some really valuable debuffs, especially with one dupe. You can stack it up to 3 times, so you can get a 45% damage increase as well as just a 45% dark damage increase. So yeah, this weapon is just ridiculous. So overall, my ideal, I guess, reroll that you'd probably want to be looking for when playing this game is getting one of the 2 Demonic Plumflower Sword as well as Moon Shadow, and then either Seojiru or Emma Lauren, as those 2 weapons and hunters are the best in the game. But obviously, if you do get Min Byung-gu, I would definitely recommend him as well, because he's just an amazing character in general. But yeah, there you have it. That is everything to do with rerolling and what you should and shouldn't go for when rerolling for your account. The game is coming out in, what, 6 days as I'm recording this. It'll be 5 days because this video will come out tomorrow. But yeah, really close. So yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace!